that hurt me. And so I was doing the best that I could through the entire situation, but it tended to get very, very toxic. Because
Kody Brown just traversed onto broadcast programming and committed what might be the most unacceptable personal destruction of his complete profession. During a Fox morning program manifestation in New York, he informally acknowledged that everything he communicated on Special Forces about acquiring possession and being responsible for his failures as a guardian was a complete and comprehensive fabrication. Not a misinterpretation, not acquired out of situation, and genuine, acknowledged fabrication. Following, millions of the audience observed him separate down in emotional displays, asserting he conclusively comprehended where he transformed incorrect with his household. He's currently openly admitting it was all exhibition technique designed to receive the drill instructors off his situation. The man literally declared he only acquired obligation because he was in a military manner circumstance and experienced pressure to communicate what they desired to perceive. He didn't signify a individual statement of it. Permit that absorb for an instance.
So it wasn't physical enough for you?
No, I wanted to go there and really get the challenge.
Kody Brown, positioned in front of recording devices, expressed genuine emotional displays and provided what appeared like a genuine instance of personal contemplation about destroying his relationships with his offspring. Supporters were astonished. Disapprovers were cautiously hopeful. Even the most experienced Kody opposition questioned if, perhaps, just perhaps, he was conclusively becoming personally conscious. But no, it was all concealment and reflections. He traversed into that New York location and destroyed his own credibility without even comprehending what he was accomplishing. The drill instructors on Special Forces advanced him to examine his function in separating his offspring. And rather of genuinely contemplating, he calculated precisely what statements would cause them halt interrogating him. That's not development. That's control in its most innocent configuration. And here's where it transforms. Even more troubling. Following acknowledging he fabricated about acquiring possession, Kody immediately converted to his most significant accomplishments of reproach deflection. He asserted his offspring naturally separated away from him because of polygamy, not because of anything he personally accomplished. He positioned himself as a casualty of situation, proposing the household organization itself compelled his offspring to select positions. Then he reproached sister spouses for creating circumstances harmful because the program provided his previous spouses and offspring a platform to distribute their reality. Translation: everything was acceptable when Kody dominated the story. But once individuals commenced communicating openly about how he genuinely managed them, suddenly it became a difficulty.
I had 18 kids with 4 wives. You know, it's been 3 divorces, and I would never do it again. I'd never marry again.
The absolute boldness of this man to acknowledge he controlled the audience, then immediately commence reproaching everyone else in the identical expression, is almost exhibition. Technique. He's not regretful, he fabricated. He's not humiliated. He genuinely accepts he accomplished nothing incorrect. And that acknowledging the fabrication somehow demonstrates he's being sincere currently. But what it genuinely demonstrates is that Kody Brown is precisely who we've consistently understood him to be, a self-absorbed individual who will communicate anything to prevent genuine responsibility. The Special Forces conclusion transmits this period, and currently every individual emotional instance Kody possesses on that program is contaminated. We'll all be observing those emotional displays, understanding they're calculated. We'll perceive those admissions, understanding he'll retract them. The instance it's advantageous. Let's reverse to just a limited periods previously, when Kody manifested on Special Forces and possessed what resembled like a genuine advancement instance.
Children, communication has ceased. I'm surprised they didn't pull me out because of that hair.
The drill instructors were interrogating him intensely about his relationships with his offspring, demanding he acquired genuine responsibility for the devastation of his household. And Kody, in what appeared like an instance of unprocessed exposure, completely separated down. Emotional displays streaming down his expression, voice fracturing with feeling, he acknowledged that his failures as a guardian originated from not comprehending how to be a favorable guardian and partner. He declared he genuinely believed he was accomplishing everything correct, but he misinterpreted what his household required and accomplished circumstances incorrect in so numerous manners. The significant revelation, he admitted that he detested being reproached for the household's malfunction, and that detestation created him resistant to acquiring possession. When the drill instructors labeled out this resistance as an immature manner of examining circumstances, Kody didn't dispute. He declared he'd acquire that disapproval. He positioned there observably disturbed and manifested to be processing decades of refusal in genuine duration. Supporters observing at residence were completely astonished. Social platforms detonated with discussions about whether this was conclusively the instance Kody would transform. Even the most severe disapprovers had to acknowledge it resembled persuasive. The emotional displays appeared genuine. The exposure experienced genuine.
No, ownership. I'm only partly to blame. All my children had a great relationship with me until the divorces.
For the initial duration in Sister Wives Chronicle, it manifested Kody might genuinely be capable of personal contemplation. But here's the circumstance about pathological fabricators and self-absorbed individuals. They're incredibly capable at exhibiting feeling. They understand precisely what individuals desire to perceive, and they can create those instances with astonishing precision. Kody has invested years on actuality programming, acquiring how to perform to recording devices, how to construct stories, how to position himself as the misinterpreted champion of his own narrative. So when those drill instructors supported him into a location demanding he possess his failures, Kody's survival impulse initiated. He calculated the most rapid direction out of that troubled circumstance, and the response was evident. Provide them precisely what they desire to perceive. The exhibition was masterful. Sincerely, the emotional displays, the separated voice, the acknowledgement of being resistant to reproach. It impacted every individual indication that would fulfill the drill instructors and cause the audience accept he was conclusively separating through his own protections. And it functioned. The interrogation concluded. The tension elevated. Kody escaped that concentrated position, possessing successfully persuaded everyone he'd experienced a genuine revelation about his function in destroying his household. Objective achieved. Except Kody created one fundamental miscalculation. He disregarded that those emotional displays and admissions were documented and transmitted to millions of individuals. He disregarded that acknowledging it was all a fabrication would cause him resemble exponentially more severe than if he'd just refused to acquire obligation in the initial position. At minimum, refusing would have been sincere. At minimum, the audience would understand where he positioned. But fabricating about responsibility, exhibiting emotional advancements you don't genuinely accept, then informally acknowledging the deception on national programming, that's a complete alternative level of malfunction. And somehow Kody believed this was a favorable concept. So, advance forward to yesterday when Kody manifested on a Fox morning program in New York to advance the Special Forces' conclusion. The presenters requested him about those intense emotional instances on the program, particularly about the mental challenges he confronted versus the physical ones. Kody clarified that the physical aspects weren't specifically difficult for him, but the mental. Interrogation by the drill instructors genuinely advanced him to his restrictions. The presenter displayed the recording of him expressing emotional distress and admitting his failures as a guardian, and then they requested him to elaborate on what that instance signified to him. This was Kody's opportunity to intensify on his supposed development. This was his opportunity to demonstrate the advancement was genuine. Rather, he accomplished the precise opposite. Kody examined directly at the recording device and acknowledged that he only communicated those circumstances because he was in a military variety circumstance with the drill instructors. He clarified that in a military environment, if you're even partially responsible for something, you have to acquire comprehensive obligation. That's just how it operates. So, he transformed into those discussions, contemplating he'd communicate them precisely what they desired to perceive. He'd declare he was the difficulty. He was the one who created all the errors, and that would fulfill their demands. But then Kody released the explosive disclosure. In actuality, the reproach ought to be distributed with his previous spouses. Permit that absorb for an instance. Kody Brown openly acknowledged on broadcast programming that his emotional admission about being a terrible guardian was strategic control. He didn't genuinely accept he was exclusively responsible. He didn't genuinely contemplate he required to acquire comprehensive possession. He was merely exhibiting for the drill instructors because he understood that's what would cause them halt interrogating him. The complete emotional deterioration was calculated performance designed to extract him from a troubled circumstance as rapidly as conceivable. The boldness of this acknowledgement is genuinely astonishing. Most individuals, when captured in a fabrication or revealed for control, will, at minimum, attempt to transform it or reduce it. They'll assert they were misinterpreted or acquired out of situation, but Kody just positioned it all out there with zero personal recognition about how it would cause him resemble. He genuinely appeared to contemplate that clarifying his tactical fabricating would somehow cause him resemble superior, like acknowledging he controlled the drill instructors demonstrated he was being sincere currently. The reasoning is completely bewildering, and the presenter's expressions during this admission were invaluable. You could perceive them processing what Kody was genuinely declaring, attempting to discover if he comprehended he was destroying his own credibility in genuine duration. They requested subsequent inquiries, presumably anticipating he'd clarify or traverse it back. But Kody just continued investigating. He appeared almost satisfied of his capability to interpret the space and communicate individuals what they desired to perceive, like it was some variety of survival capability he'd mastered, rather than a profoundly problematic configuration of dishonesty. The man was genuinely boasting about fabricating on national programming, and he possessed no concept how severe it resonated. But Kody wasn't concluded deflecting. Oh no, he was just transforming heated up. Following acknowledging he fabricated to the drill instructors, he immediately initiated into his clarification for why his relationships with his offspring deteriorated apart. And surprise, surprise, it possessed nothing to accomplish with his own conduct. According to Kody, his 18 offspring naturally separated away from him because of polygamy. Not because he managed them poorly, not because he performed preferences, not because he emotionally abandoned most of them while distributing focus on Robyn's offspring. Negative. It was merely the organization of plural matrimony that compelled them to select positions. Kody clarified that when the separations occurred, the offspring became casualties of those separations. They had to acquire positions, and because of polygamy, they naturally possessed proximate relationships with their mothers. So, of course, they selected their mothers over him. It's just fundamental calculation, genuinely. The system itself was manipulated against him from the commencement. He's positioning himself as another casualty of polygamy's inherent organization rather than recognizing that his own selections and management of his offspring drove them away. It's the ultimate deflection because he's reproaching something abstract and systematic, rather, of examining at his concrete activities. Here's what causes this dispute so infuriating. Kody possessed magnificent relationships with his previous offspring for years within the precise identical polygamous organization. Those offspring appreciated him. They supported him. They contributed in the household interaction without concern. So distinctly, polygamy itself wasn't the difficulty. What transformed wasn't the household organization. What transformed was Kody's conduct. Once Robyn initiated the representation, he ceased displaying up for his other offspring. He ceased creating them, experience appreciated. He generated evident hierarchies where Robyn's offspring received everything and everyone else received portions. Christine's offspring observed their guardian select Robyn's household over and over again. Janelle's offspring perceived him dismiss their mother and prioritize Robyn's requirements in every circumstance. Even Meri's only offspring, Leon, experienced the impact of Kody's preference and emotional lack. These aren't abstract sentiments. These are documented configurations that performed out on sister spouses for years. The offspring didn't separate away because polygamy compelled them to select. They traversed away because Kody provided them every reason to depart and zero reasons to remain. And let's be transparent about something. When guardians separate, offspring don't automatically have to acquire positions. Healthy cooperative parenting exists. Substantial offspring preserve strong relationships with both guardians following a separation. The only duration offspring experience compelled to select is when one guardian creates it impossible not to. When one guardian is harmful, controlling, or emotionally mistreating, offspring naturally gravitate toward the more secure guardian. That's not about polygamy. That's about personal safeguarding. Kody, asserting his offspring were casualties of separation, who possessed no selection, but to abandon him is summit self-absorbed deflection. He's presenting their determination to distance themselves as something that occurred to them rather than something they actively selected based on his conduct. They're not casualties of separation. They're survivors of his parenting. And the circumstance that he still can't perceive the distinction following all this duration demonstrates precisely why those relationships are separated. But Kody possessed another objective in his perception, and this one was specifically revealing. He communicated the Fox presenters that circumstances became very, very harmful because of Sister Wives itself. Every one of their imperfections and responsibilities was being portrayed on the program, with everyone indicating reproach at each other. He declared the offspring naturally relocated away from him, and that damaged him profoundly. He was accomplishing the optimal he could through the complete circumstance, but the program created everything more severe by providing everyone a platform to publicly reproach him for the household's destruction. Let's decompose what Kody is genuinely declaring here. For years, he dominated the story on Sister Wives. His previous spouses traversed on fragile surfaces around him. They concealed for his severe conduct. They created excuses for his lack, and preference. They simulated everything was acceptable, even when it distinctly wasn't. The offspring remained silent about how they genuinely experienced. Everyone performed their allocated functions in Kody's cautiously constructed illusion, where he was the benevolent patriarch, maintaining a complicated household unified through absolute force of determination. And during all those years when individuals were safeguarding him and concealing the reality, Kody possessed zero difficulties with the program. But then something transformed. Christine departed and commenced communicating her reality. Janelle pursued and ceased creating excuses for him. The mature offspring commenced initiating up about how Kody genuinely managed them behind the segments. Suddenly, the story Kody had dominated for over a period commenced deteriorating. Individuals were distributing their genuine experiences. They were labeling out his preference, his separated guarantees, his emotional control. They were revealing the man behind the presentation, and Kody completely detested it. So, currently he's reproaching sister spouses for creating circumstances harmful. But the program didn't generate the harmfulness. The program merely ceased concealing it. What Kody is genuinely declaring is that he's furious he misplaced domination of the story. He's infuriated that his previous spouses and offspring conclusively experienced secure, sufficient to communicate the reality about their experiences. He's furious that the audience received to perceive who he genuinely is, rather, of the interpretation of himself he'd been cautiously organizing for years. The harmfulness he's complaining about isn't the program, it's responsibility. And here's the satisfying contradiction. If Sister Wives is causing so much suffering in Kody's existence, if it's destroying his relationships and creating everything harmful, he possesses a very straightforward resolution available to him. Halt recording, traverse away, terminate the program. Substantial of his mature offspring would presumably commemorate if he conclusively advanced back from the recording devices. But he won't accomplish that because despite all his complaints about how the program devastated his household, Kody appreciates the platform. He appreciates the focus. He appreciates being on programming, even if it signifies everyone receives to observe his malfunction. So reproaching sister spouses for his separated relationships is just another instrument in Kody's Deflection collection. It's not the program's responsibility that individuals are maintaining him responsible. It's not the recording device's responsibility that his conduct is being revealed. The program didn't generate these difficulties. It just sees permitting Kody conceal them, and that's what he genuinely can't excuse. Then Kody released another explosive disclosure that flawlessly encapsulates his complete incapability to comprehend authority interactions. Following acknowledging he fabricated to the drill instructors and only simulated to acquire obligation, he declared that in actuality, the reproach for the household's destruction ought to be distributed with his previous spouses. He genuinely accepts that Christine, Janelle, and Meri are equally culpable for what occurred to their household. He's attempting to recompose Chronicle as if they were all equivalent companions in this catastrophe, all creating joint determinations that directed to the household's deterioration. The delusion is astonishing. Let's receive something direct here. These women were not Kody's equivalents in this household organization. Polygamy, particularly the fundamentalist interpretation Kody practiced, is inherently hierarchical. The partner maintains all the authority. He dominates the finances. He creates the significant determinations. He determines which spouse receives his duration and focus. The spouses exist in a subservient function by design. They're intended to be submissive to their partner's authority. That's literally the foundation of the acceptance system they were all developed in and committed to. So, for Kody to position there and assert his previous spouses ought to distribute equivalent reproach for the household's malfunction is completely absurd. How can you maintain someone responsible for outcomes when they possessed no authority to transform those outcomes? Christine couldn't compel Kody to invest duration with her offspring. Janelle couldn't demand he manage her household equitably. Meri couldn't create him display up emotionally for their matrimony. They were operating within a system where Kody maintained all the resources. And currently he desires to assert they're equally responsible for how he performed those resources. It's psychological control on a massive dimension. And let's discuss about what it acquired for these women to conclusively depart. They didn't just consciousness up one day and determine to separate. They endured years, decades, in some situations of emotional neglect and mistreatment. They attempted everything to create their matrimony's function. They requested Kody to be present. They compromised their own requirements and aspirations, attempting to accommodate into his vision of household. They observed him select Robyn over and over again and still attempted to maintain circumstances unified. The amount of mistreatment they tolerated before conclusively declaring sufficient is genuinely disappointing. Because here's what Kody doesn't comprehend or refuses to recognize. departing a mistreating relationship acquires incredible courage and strength. It's not a determination individuals create effortlessly, particularly when they're profoundly embedded in a religious acceptance system that communicates them departing as spiritual failure. These women remained far longer than they ought to have because they were attempting to honor their commitments and safeguard their offspring. And the cycle of mistreatment Kody positioned them through, the control and domination and emotional activities maintained them, confined in that cycle for years. The only individual responsible for mistreatment is the abuser. Period. Kody can't assert his previous spouses distribute the reproach for the mistreatment they experienced at his appendages. He can't demand they acquire possession of his failures as a partner and guardian. They were casualties attempting to survive in an impossible circumstance, and the circumstance that Kody still perceives them as equally culpable demonstrates he has acquired completely nothing. Then the Fox presenters transported up something that's been circulating in the sister spouses conflict for periods currently. They requested Kody about Meri's assertions that he desired her to execute a non-disclosure agreement during their location settlement. This was Kody's opportunity to address the NDA controversy directly, perhaps even acquire some responsibility for attempting to silence his previous spouse. Rather, he initiated into the most transparent fabrication of the complete conversation, which is genuinely declaring something considering everything else he'd currently acknowledged. Kody performed like the complete NDA circumstance was just disturbed discussion. He declared it was all something a legal representative, an attorney had recommended. He genuinely emphasized that statement attorney in this unusual manner, extending it out like he was attempting to create it resemble more legitimate. He asserted it was just portion of a commercial transaction that was occurring, and it possessed nothing to accomplish with the program. Circumstances just received misconstrued and misinterpreted. He clarified the difficulty was that he and Meri were only discussing through attorneys at the duration, so communications received traversed. Straightforward misinterpretation, nothing to perceive here. But here's where Kody's narrative completely deteriorates apart. Anyone who's been pursuing the Coyote Pass location conflict understands that all property commercial transactions are public documentation. Every individual documentation related to the transaction and separation of that location is documented with Coconino County. You, me, any arbitrary individual on the internet can proceed to examine up precisely how the location was separated, when documentation were executed, who compensated what. It's all correct there for anyone to perceive. So, what precisely would Meri require to execute an NDA about if everything's currently public documentation? The timeline alone reveals Kody and Robyn's fabrications on sister wives. They created it appear like Meri was maintaining up the location settlement, extending her appendages and generating difficulties, but the public documentation communicate a completely alternative narrative. Robyn was the one who refused to execute for periods. The holdup wasn't Meri. It was Robyn demanding Meri execute this NDA before she'd concur to finalize anything. They literally modified the program to create Meri resemble like the difficulty when county documentation demonstrate it was Robyn all throughout. So why would Kody demand an NDA if not to maintain Meri from discussing about what genuinely occurred? The only rational clarification is that he desired to dominate what she could communicate about their relationship, their finances, and the household interactions on sister spouses. He desired to silence her from revealing circumstances that occurred behind the segments, circumstances that might contradict the story Kody has been transferring to the audience, circumstances that might disclose financial improprieties or separated agreements or controlling conduct. An NDA about a property commercial transaction creates zero perception. An NDA to maintain a previous spouse from distributing confidential information on an actuality program, that creates flawless perception. And Kody declaring it wasn't about the program is the most significant revelation of all. Remember previously in the identical conversation when he acknowledged the program created circumstances harmful because individuals commenced reproaching him publicly. He detests that his previous spouses are conclusively communicating their reality. So, of course, he'd attempt to legally prevent Meri from accomplishing precisely that. When Kody declares something isn't about the program, it's consistently about the program. What this complete New York conversation reveals is Kody Brown's foundation operating system, the fundamental configuration that characterizes every individual one of his relationships. He traverses into troubled circumstances, evaluates what individuals desire to perceive, provides precisely those statements with whatever feeling appears suitable, and then immediately abandons those positions the instant he's in a more secure environment. It's control as reflex, it's dishonesty as survival approach, and the circumstance that he openly acknowledged to accomplishing this with the Special Forces drill instructors discloses he doesn't even perceive it as problematic conduct. Contemplate about what he's genuinely admitting here. He positioned across from instructed military personnel who were attempting to assist him comprehend his function in destroying his household relationships. These weren't individuals attempting to humiliate him or separate him down. They were advancing him toward genuine personal contemplation and responsibility. And Kody's response was to exhibit precisely the emotional deterioration they desired to perceive, communicate precisely the statements they desired to perceive, and then privately dismiss all of it as tactical fabricating to escape discomfort. That's sociopathic level control. But here's the circumstance. Kody has been accomplishing this his complete mature existence. He accomplished it with his spouses for decades. He'd guarantee Christine he'd be more present than vanish to Robyn's residence. He'd communicate Janelle he appreciated her partnership, then exclude her from significant determinations. He'd confirm Meri their relationship could restore, then emotionally abandon her completely. Every individual one of his spouses possesses narratives about Kody, creating guarantees, exhibiting temporary transformation, and then reverting to his default conduct the instant the tension elevated. The configuration is identical. He accomplishes the identical circumstance with his offspring. They'd confront him about his preference or lack. He'd express emotional distress and apologize and guarantee to accomplish superior. And then nothing would genuinely transform. He'd provide them just sufficient performative feeling to purchase himself some duration and relief from their disappointment. Then he'd proceed correct back to prioritizing Robyn's offspring and disregarding everyone else over and over and over again. The offspring eventually acquired that Kody's statements signified completely nothing. His emotional displays were control instruments. His expressions of regret were departure approaches. And currently, he's accomplished it on national programming with millions of observers. He exhibited an advancement that never occurred. He created exposure that wasn't genuine. He transformed emotional displays into instruments to control instructed professionals whose complete occupation is detecting dishonesty. And then he traversed into another conversation and informally acknowledged the complete circumstance was fabricated. Because in Kody's perception, acknowledging he's a tactical fabricator somehow creates him more sincere than just being a regular fabricator. The reasoning is completely reversed. What's perhaps most troubling is that Kody genuinely appears to contemplate this is standard conduct. He doesn't manifest humiliated or embarrassed about acknowledging he controls individuals. He discusses about it like it's a capable survival capability he's developed rather than a profound character imperfection that destroys every significant relationship he possesses. He's satisfied of his capability to interpret spaces and provide exhibitions. He doesn't comprehend that what he's characterizing is pathological dishonesty. And that complete absence of personal recognition is precisely why nothing will ever transform. The complete optimal portion of this complete transportation devastation conversation was observing the presenters attempt to preserve their professional composure while distinctly contemplating Kody was one of the most unusual individuals they'd ever encountered. Kurt Menefee, who most individuals understand from Fox NFL Sunday, provided Kody the most uncomfortable separation at the conclusion of the segment. He declared something like, "It was intriguing to receive, to understand you, or intriguing to meet you. And you could perceive the subtext communicating through every translation. You are unusual, and I never desire to communicate to you again." The discomfort was evident. And sincerely, Kurt's response is precisely what occurs when Kody enterprises outside his dominated sister spouse's environment. When he's communicating with individuals who haven't been conditioned to tolerate his nonsense, they immediately identify him as unusual. They acquire up on his self-absorption. They recognize how he discusses over individuals and dominates discussions. They perceive through his performative feelings. Regular individuals who aren't invested in the sister spouses system meet Kody and contemplate what on environment is incorrect with this man. It's genuinely confirming to observe. During the conversation, Kody even acknowledged he irritated his special forces participants. He labeled Randall Cobb a professional athletic performer. By the incorrect designation, the complete duration, they were recording unified. He referenced Sean Johnson East and Andrew East as Sean and Andrew West. And rather of being humiliated about constantly receiving designations incorrect and irritating everyone around him, Kody just expressed amusement it off. He declared he can't remember designations and possesses a substantial expression, and just continues discussing even when individuals distinctly desire him to halt. Like it's unusual and attractive, rather of profoundly inconsiderate and personally absorbed. That acknowledgement correct there communicates you everything you require to understand about Kody Brown. He's conscious, he experiences difficulty individuals, he understands, he dominates discussions and doesn't attend. He comprehends that his constant discussing irritates those around him, and he doesn't be concerned. He presents it as just being himself, possessing a substantial character, being incapable to dominate his substantial expression. But what he's genuinely characterizing is self-absorbed conduct, where his requirement for focus and confirmation overrides any consideration for the individuals he's communicating with. It's not attractive, it's exhausting. The circumstance that instructed athletes and celebrities who've experienced with intense media examination discovered Kody irritating declares comprehensively. These aren't individuals who are effortlessly disturbed or unfamiliar with substantial characters. They've been in preparation spaces and on foundations and around massive self-perceptions, their complete professions, and they still discovered Kody uniquely insufferable. That acquires a particular level of obnoxiousness. Brianna Chicken Fry has been communicative about how impolite and condescending Kody was to her from day one. Other participants have created similar responses. When literally everyone you communicate with discovers you irritating, perhaps the difficulty isn't that you possess a substantial character. Perhaps the difficulty is that you're just unpleasant. So observing Kurt, Menifee provide Kody that uncomfortable dismissal at the conclusion of the conversation was genuinely fulfilling. It was confirmation that affirmative, Kody genuinely is that unusual. Affirmative, standard individuals acquire up on it immediately. And affirmative, we're all perceiving the identical circumstance. We're not disturbed. He is. So, here we are with Kody Brown, possessing just demonstrated what Sister Wives supporters have understood for literal years. He's a pathological fabricator who will never ever genuinely acquire obligation for anything he's accomplished. He'll express emotional distress on recording device when it performs his purposes. He'll communicate all the correct statements about responsibility and possession when he's supported into a location. He'll exhibit exposure and personal contemplation if that's what receives him out of a troubled circumstance. But the moment he's out of that concentrated position, the moment the tension elevates, he'll immediately reverse direction and reproach everyone else for the destruction he caused. The Special Forces conclusion transmits this period, and currently every individual emotional instance Kody possesses on that program is completely contaminated. When he expresses emotional distress about his separated relationships, we'll understand those emotional displays are calculated. When he acknowledges he failed his offspring, we'll understand he's just communicating the drill instructors what they desire to perceive. When he discusses about desiring to be superior, we'll understand it's all exhibition because he's currently acknowledged on broadcast programming that none of it was genuine. He's destroyed any capability that the audience might perceive genuine development or transformation. He sabotaged himself in the most spectacular manner conceivable. And the genuinely unusual portion is that Kody doesn't even appear to comprehend what he's accomplished. He traversed into that New York. Conversation, contemplating that, acknowledging he fabricated tactically would somehow cause him resemble sincere, like admitting to control was a configuration of transparency. He genuinely accepted clarifying that he only communicated what the drill instructors desired to perceive, demonstrated he was being genuine currently. The complete absence of personal recognition is almost impressive in its comprehensiveness. Most individuals would at minimum attempt to transform their fabrications or moderate their acknowledgments. Kody just positioned it all out there with zero identification of how condemning it resonated. This is who Kody Brown is at his foundation. A man who will reproach polygamy for his offspring, abandoning him, rather, of examining his own preference and emotional neglect. A man who will reproach sister spouses for revealing his conduct, rather, of acquiring responsibility for that conduct. A man who will assert his previous spouses are equally responsible for mistreatment they experienced at his appendages. A man who will demand NDAs to silence the individuals he's damaged. A man who will exhibit emotional advancements he doesn't signify and then boast about the exhibition. His previous spouses conclusively escaped. His offspring are safeguarding themselves by preserving separation. And Kody is departed with precisely what he merits, the consequences of his own activities, with no one departed to reproach but himself. Except he still won't reproach himself. He'll continue deflecting and controlling and fabricating until the day he terminates, because genuine personal contemplation would require acknowledging he's been incorrect about everything. And Kody Brown would rather misplace everyone he asserts to appreciate than acknowledge he was incorrect. Submit your considerations below. Are you astonished Kody acknowledged he fabricated? Or is this precisely what you anticipated from him? Approve, register, and remain observant Because the subsequent recording is anticipating, and you won't desire to overlook what's approaching next.